Talk briefly about refrigeration. The default current rule regarding refrigeration where I live is no refrigeration, no energy for heating or cooling. We're then going to break that rule. A friend of mine who lives off grid got a refrigerator, and he's got a tiny ass system, and he's able to run his refrigerator. And there's a very few things that actually need them, like vaccines or something. People always bring that up if you say you're against refrigeration. They're always like, "Oh, you're against vaccines then." And it's like, no, that's not what I said. And I'm not like morally against refrigeration. I just think we overuse it, and most refrigerators are filled with rotting crap. So they're not used well. However, we could have some very small refrigerators for certain things. There might be reasons to refrigerate some things to have them live longer, so it's possible that the kitchen could have something refrigerated. Rather than refrigeration, I would rather use root cellars. Big root cellars. Multiple root cellars with different environments. Because some root cellars want to have it be cold and dry, for dried goods, for example. And some root cellars want it to be kind of moister because they have vegetables in them or fruits. And not all vegetables and fruits should even be stored in the same place, since some of them give off a chemical that causes them to ripen and will cause other things to ripen. And we'd have to look at a list of all the fruits and veggies and decide, oh, these fruits go in that one and those go over there. And so we might, have some segregation in our root cellar system. The other thing is that we can design root cellars so the entry is from above. You see a lot of root cellars with a side door entry, but then all the cold air pours out. And instead, if we had a ramp that came in from above, the cold air would be trapped within it. Already immediately, I think of, oh shit, we might be creating a death trap. What about radon in there? What about carbon monoxide or something gathering in there? Well, we should have a way to air it out. We should have a lower door that we can empty all the air in and out if we want to. We should have detectors for things like radon. I don't even know what radon is, okay? I just know we don't want it. And carbon monoxide shouldn't happen if there's no engine or something. But I just want to be paranoid about not creating a death trap. So, because we're trapping all this air down there. Now, when you open the top of it, the cold air doesn't get out. And that is a wind-protected entry area up there, a staging area where we can drop things out of a vehicle, and we can even have, with this ramp, we can take whole big, huge, heavy bags of stuff or carts of stuff, and we can just lower them down this ramp. And so our physical labor is much less. And then we may, down in the root cellar, if it's a safe place to be, also have some place for processing. People would have to wear like warm clothing and stuff and move fast so they could do cold, because we're going to make it cold. The closer we get to freezing without hitting freezing, the longer the food lasts. Every degree you go down towards freezing, the food lasts way longer. And so we want it to be just above freezing. It's going to be cold as fuck. And this might be an exception to the refrigeration rule, because we could have a solar-powered refrigeration system with no battery. It only operated during the day. And maybe the root cellars are shaded too, so that the solar radiation doesn't even hit the ground around there. We just really want it to get it cold. I mean, all the ground around it will become colder if we have this refrigeration system in a room-sized refrigerator with shelving, big shelving, and ways to pick stuff up and put it places, and plants for different kinds of things. That would be okay. And I don't know what kind of refrigeration. I don't know what refrigeration technologies exist. But I love the idea of running it without a battery, because that's the biggest problem with solar power. This thing would only run during the day when there was sun on it, and it would continually be making that place really cold, and there'd be a cutoff on it so it never freezes it. But I don't think we'd make that hardcore system anyway. But again, there is that goal. Get as close to freezing as possible, which means with a big enough refrigeration system, we could freeze it if we wanted. And maybe it should be sized so we could get to that level. And we can build it first, and then we can add the refrigeration, knowing how we're going to add it and leaving spaces for the electrical wires or just including them in the building, and know how we're going to position it and how that affects airflow. and how water happens, because refrigeration systems produce a water sometimes. Like you've noticed refrigerators that ice up or have condensation issues. Well, we might want to control the air in a way that we keep it at the humidity we want. We want to control both humidity and temperature, both. And I imagine many of those, a bunch of root cellars, some of them for longer term storage as a survival thing, and then others that we expect things to be arriving and moving out of, have these root cellars be right next to restaurants that are producing food, so that if we're storing a bag of grain, that bag of grain gets dragged out of the root cellar. It goes right into a grinder, making nice fresh flour, because flour does not age well, right? We don't want to store flour. We want to store wheat or barley or oats or whatever it is in its grain form, and then figure out how to turn that into a more usable form later, because it then starts aging right away. And so that same place the flour gets ground up also has solar and other cooking of bread and pasta, fresh pasta making. And so you've got this system that is making bread and pasta right there, and there's places to sell those products at a restaurant right next to it. We also have systems in place to move that bread and that pasta to other places on the property. And how big each system needs to be, I don't know, but I want more than one of them. And it's kind of like each community should have at least one and probably two. Because what if one fails for some reason? I mean, some of these systems are so simple they're not going to fail. But you could easily imagine, given the size of the communities I'm talking about, where every sub-community could have 2 bread bakeries. And we don't have to build all those. We can do it as needed over time. But we can build, one to start with, and then we build another one, and then we have one that's mobile that can serve local communities in other places, and we are able to show off solar cooking and solar ovens, because we have ways to solar cook stuff. Root cellars instead of refrigeration, and maybe cheating and adding some refrigeration in there too. It's possible.